All right, Coach. Thanks for joining us today. Why don't you start off real quick, maybe opening some comments about, getting into spring ball, your first spring ball here, and what your expectations are going into tomorrow morning.
Very excited to get started on spring ball. These guys have been working really hard. Excited to be able to get out there and do some football with these guys. They've been working out with Tank for a long time and spending time in there. We've gotten to meet with them some and just to go out there and see what they can do and throw the ball around a little bit, run the football. And, the first couple practices are no pads. So that's always, it is what it is, but can't wait to get out there with these guys. Very excited.
All right, Doug, go ahead and start off, and you guys just head down the line.
Hi, Coach. Everyone always wants to know about the quarterback position, obviously. What have you seen from that group, and what are some expectations on what you want to do with them in spring ball?
Well, I've got 6 quarterbacks, 5 on scholarship, so I've got a bunch of guys that are going to get some reps early. Got 2 guys that really played a lot last year between BP and Isaiah. And I'm excited to see both of them out there. I'm excited to see all the quarterbacks see what they can do. It's a little bit different system, different way of doing things, different approach, and they're excited, and I can't wait to watch them throw the ball around and see what they can do.
From this group in general, do you see the skill sets that are going to fit in the new offense that you're going to be installing this spring?
I do. I mean, you look at a guy like, we'll start with Brandon. I mean, he's got God-given NFL type of talent. I mean, 6'4", he's 220 pounds. He can run pretty well. He's got a strong arm, quick release. We just got to keep working on him on being that kind of natural, leader type of guy, but he's getting better every day. And then you look at Isaiah, and he's totally the opposite. He's a shorter quarterback, but he can throw it, very athletic, probably one of the more athletic guys on our team, can run. So, I've always been a guy, whoever the quarterback ends up being, that's kind of the way your offense has to evolve a little bit on certain situations. But both of those guys have the ability to run the system easily, and it can be tweaked around either guy.
Thank you.
Okay, Coach. Coach Walter spoke a lot about how attentive you guys have been in meetings in terms of taking notes. What have you seen from your quarterback room and in terms of those guys learning the offense and all the different calls and schemes that you're trying to run inside of your meetings with them?
They've showed up every day with a notebook and a pen in hand, taking notes, and have been extremely attentive. So, I told them the other day, we're going to go out on the field on Tuesday morning, and we're going to find out who's really learned it and locked in, because it'll show as soon as you get out there. So that's where I'm kind of excited to go out there and see what happens. But they've been great in meetings, very attentive. It's a great group of guys.
What kind of difficulties does that bring for a quarterback as they learn an offense with a ball actually and not just in a meeting room? Like, what kind of difficulties could that bring for them?
Well, I always tell them, we're sitting in a meeting room and I'm asking them questions. We're going over film. I'm asking them stuff, and I say, you guys are sitting in here. It's air conditioned. It's 68 degrees. There's nobody yelling at you. You don't have to make any plays. You just answer these questions. And I said, this is easy in here. I said, now we got to go out and see if you can do it out there. And our goal is always to make practice at a certain level of pressure on them to where the games are easy. So now it's a little different. We're installing a new offense, and we got to kind of go along at a slow pace, but we're always trying to make practice be hard to the point to where the games are easy.
Hey, Coach, I'm just curious how you are developing a depth chart for the first practice. Are you using film from last year? Are you using starters from last year? Are you, some combination of that, what you've seen in meeting rooms? How are you going about that for the first practice? Well,
as far as the depth chart, I mean, the guys that are going to kind of go with what I call the first offensive line out there is going to be Brandon and Isaiah, and they're going to kind of rep with that group. And the other guys are going to kind of rep with the other group. But all 6 quarterbacks, even Josh, my walk-on, they're all going to get reps in the first 2 practices. And I told them, I said, how it's going to go is depending on how you guys do moving forward, that's going to determine your reps moving forward for any of the 6. So obviously we can't rep 6 quarterbacks all the way through the spring or into fall camp, but we'll start out the first 2 practices. They'll all get their opportunities.
And are you letting like Bart Miller decide, who's his first line, first practice, or, are you involved in saying, okay, here's who our starters is to kick this off, or, how are you going about that?
No, we sit down as an offense. I mean, it's not a dictatorship in there, and I've never done it that way. We sit down as an offensive staff. We talk about things, and at the end of the day, if there's a decision that needs to be made, then that's what I do on the offensive side of the ball. Just like if we sit down and there's a team decision to be made, that's what Coach B does. But we've talked about who's going to go in certain situations at each group right there and made a decision on all that. But they're all going to move around a lot the first 2 to 3 to 4 practices. So it's nothing really etched in stone.
Thanks.
Hey, Tony, hope you're well. I'm just wondering, you mentioned Brandon and Brett mentioned this too, and it's nothing new to us, but getting more leadership vocally out of Brandon. What does that look like, and how do you try and draw that out of him when he's naturally just kind of a quieter guy?
He's naturally a different type of quarterback than some of the ones I've had over the years that have had a lot of success. But the more I'm around him, it doesn't happen, just constantly, but he speaks up a little bit more. And I told him, I said, Brandon, I'm going to be on you about this and pushing you on this because this is going to make you a better football player and a better leader out there on the field. And he gets it. He knows it, but he's still, at the end of the day, I mean, he's got a certain personality. It's the way he's been for the last, he's got to be 22 or 23 by now, probably. Just been his personality. So it'll be a gradual thing, but I think it's something that can improve and we can get better at it. I'd love to get somebody I had back in the day and get in there and spend a little time with him sometime, maybe quarterbacks, or just get him around some other type of people. Maybe, God, it'd be great to be at a place where I could take him over to an NFL practice or something and just kind of see what kind of, vocalness these quarterbacks have. But, he's a great kid. He's working really hard. He spends as much time in here as anybody on learning these plays and picking it up, and probably has the most advantage out of everybody because he spent so much time in college football. And, he might just say, okay, what we're calling it here is what I called it there. It's similar, but it's a different name. And, so he's got the edge on everybody there. He's been in a lot of practices.
And you mentioned a lot about Isaiah's talent. What about his intangibles that you see, like Brandon you're talking about?
Well, I think just the opposite of Brandon is Isaiah brings those natural, kids gravitate towards Isaiah. He's that natural leader. He's got a lot of charisma and character, and I love Isaiah too. And that's not the stuff you got to work on with Isaiah. So it's kind of totally different there. They're different physically, they're different talent-wise, but they're also totally different as far as what they bring to the table or their assets as far as their leadership ability. So Isaiah is very easy to be in there. He takes control of the huddle. He's more vocal type of kid, and that's just what he is naturally. So it's easy for him.
Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
Hey, Tony, by the time you guys get to the end of spring, maybe even specifically with the quarterback, what would you constitute as a successful spring? Is it like a numerical value? Is it you reading their feel for what you're doing? How will you kind of know that things went fairly well for you?
Well, from the quarterback position, you're saying, Joey?
Yeah.
From the quarterback position, I want them to understand how critical ball security is for us and taking care of the ball every day. I told them if we walk off the field and as a quarterback group or position, we haven't put the ball in jeopardy and haven't turned it over, we had a good day because you'll have a chance to win football games. Beyond that, they need to learn and master our offense and totally understand it, because the better they understand our offense and know exactly what our kids are doing, the more they can focus on what they should be focusing on, which is the defense. So that'll be a process going through the spring, because as a quarterback, you got a lot to think about. You're not only just your job, but you go out there and all of a sudden your tight end's on the ball and the Z receiver out there is covering him up. Well, you'd think that's the Z receiver's responsibility, but as a good quarterback, I got to know that Z's supposed to be off the ball and I got to back him up right there. So there's so many things that go into the quarterback position, but they've got to understand how we're going to coach the game, how we're going to approach it as far as taking care of the football, and then they got to master our offense. And we got 15 practices and a whole bunch of meetings to get that done.
And when you look at this group with all the super seniors, many of them, even on the offensive line, have started for the better part of 4 years and have gotten kind of used to doing things a certain way because it's all they've known. Is there a process for you guys to meet some of these veterans in the middle to help kind of ease this transition into a new coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, anytime what we've done, and Coach B sat down with me right away, and I sat down with the offensive staff, and anything that we could kind of, if we had what we call the double post and they called it whatever, we'd make it that name right there. So it wasn't a whole lot of things, but anything we could do, any little thing to make it similar to what some of these kids have heard for the last 3 or 4 years, we tried to do, because it's much easier for us as coaches to learn something a little bit new than it is for the players. So I wouldn't say it's a lot of terminology that way, but anything we could do to make it easier, we did.
Thanks, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, are you a guy that would like to be able to know who your starting quarterback is after these 15 practices, or are you okay with the competition kind of continuing on into fall camp and seeing where you guys are at that point?
No, I'm okay with it going, into fall camp. That doesn't bother me at all. But at the same point, if you walk away from spring practice and somebody has absolutely earned that job, then that's great. You know who your starting quarterback is. If you don't, you don't, and then you keep going and moving forward, and you go through the summer and into camp. So that doesn't bother me or concern me one way or the other. You just got to get to a point, where it gets worrisome is if you get to a point where you're getting close to that first game week and you still really don't know who your starting quarterback is. I haven't had that situation very often, because usually that's when people are trying to play 2 guys because they don't know who their starter is. And that's not a good thing to have.
And Coach Walters just mentioned it previous to you, but have you noticed a buy from the older guys? Because he was said that there was some fear of some older guys saying, well, I've always done it this way. I don't know if I can do that, or that's different than anything anybody's ever asked me to do. Have you seen guys kind of adapt and be okay with, hey, I get to learn something new this year?
Yeah, and I lost you there just for a second on your question, but these guys have been unbelievable. Okay, everything that from the weight room up here to the football to whatever, they have been totally open-minded and buying in and trying to do everything that we've asked them to do. And it's really, they're a great group of kids. I mean, we got some really good kids here. They've been open-minded. Whatever we've asked them to do, they've done, and they're attempting to do. They might not always do it exactly right the first time or the second time, but they're trying, and they've been awesome.
Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
Hey, Tony, good to see you. Something Brett talked to us about last week was having these one-on-one drills during about the 6th week that you guys were all together, just putting guys one-on-one against each other, offense, defense mostly. Well, what did you see out of that? What did you maybe like out of that that workout that you guys had?
Well, some of the one-on-ones, like when we went out there and competed, I know Isaiah and TA went against each other, which, kind of everybody was curious what would happen there. And it was great competition, and you found out who likes to compete and who gets after it. And they had a great competition that day. And I know we came inside, I think it was either later that day or the next morning when Coach B was announcing, who won more than the other, and the team had a great time with it. But probably the thing I noticed the most, and you pick up in that situation, is who loves to compete and who's not going to give up.
And then I asked Ryan about this as well, just the relationships with the other offensive coaches on your staff. I know when you first got hired, obviously the staff hadn't been quite filled out yet. So what have those relationships been like? What's it been like to work with these other coaches on the offensive side?
It's been awesome. I mean, Coach B did, if I could say the best thing that he's done is the people he's put in this building. And that goes from the 10 assistants down to some of the off the field guys, is everybody he's put in this building. And I know I was one of, I think the first new hire when I came in, and because of COVID, I think it was me and Coach B in the building all by ourselves almost. And then we added our offensive line coach, and we were here for a little bit, and then we just kind of gradually kept adding coaches. So I've been fortunate to be here through the hiring of almost everybody. So I've spent a lot of time with everybody, not only on offense, but on defense. And the one thing you do as a coaching staff, and I've been doing this a long time, especially when you come into a new job, is, your wives and your family aren't here yet. And so you'll spend some time in the hotel and getting to know these guys. And I actually closed on my house pretty quick. I've had a bunch of the guys over to the house for some cookouts and stuff. And we got a great staff. I mean, we get along. It's just, I can't tell you what an unbelievable job he did as far as filling the staff.
Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
Hey, Tony. Colin actually asked basically what I was just going to ask, but I'll change it a little bit. How have you been trying to build early relationships with the players in this time as well?
Well, you try and get them around as much as you can. Typically in a normal situation, like I would have the quarterbacks out to my house and they'd come out, my wife would make them a big old dinner. And I mean, we've done that for the last however many years I've been coaching. And we try and figure out, you know, these set of quarterbacks, they really like which meal, and that's kind of the meal that we make for them. And they'll come over 3 or 4 times a year, and you get to know them there. And then at least once a year, have the whole offense out to my house and do the same thing. It's just with the way things are right now, we just really can't do that. But just getting around these guys as much as possible. Wherever you see them, down in the weight room, maybe even the mornings when they're working out, I'll be down there stretching and kind of working out at times and getting around the offense and the defense guys. So as much time as we can spend with them is what we're trying to do.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, Coach, I think that's it. We need to get you so you can get to your meeting. So appreciate your time today.